Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. On this edition, we're going to be getting you prepared for the Saints matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Atlanta Falcons come into town. We all know about the classic game that was played at the beginning of the season when both teams had a lot of hopes, right? You thought that, you could possibly make the playoffs, possibly be a Super Bowl contender. But as we fast forward now, we notice that these two teams are really bad. They're not good. Like the New Orleans Saints are 4-9. And you look at the Atlanta Falcons, they're 5-8. I mean, this game right here is just basically just for bragging rights. I mean, unless you're into like this overall record thing, the Saints have an opportunity today, if they win, to tie the overall record from the Atlanta Falcons, since Atlanta Falcons fans been holding on to this overall record for God knows how long to try to validate themselves over the Saints. The Saints can actually tie that overall record, so we don't have to hear that anymore as Saints fans. But it also, it's the Saints and the Falcons, right? I mean, it's a classic rivalry. I mean, it is no surprise that neither fan base like each other. And anytime you have opportunity to knock off your rivals is a plus. And, this game is going to be very, very interesting today. The New Orleans Saints still not mathematically out of the playoffs, even though, I mean, you pretty much, put every nail in a coffin. I mean, you basically just taking one nail and hitting it with a hammer. You're just kind of prolonging this situation. But the New Orleans Saints winning today can help their cause. The Atlanta Falcons winning today can help their cause. Both of these teams are playing today with two different quarterbacks than they did in week one. We know that, it was Marcus Mariota for the Falcons and Jameis Winston for the Saints. Crazy that those guys were number one and number two, respectively, in the 2015 draft. But they played against one another. And now we fast forward, we see that Andy Dalton and first-time starter Desmond Ridder, he's getting his NFL start against the New Orleans Saints. What better way to do it than to possibly go up against a team that if you become the franchise quarterback, your fan base is going to be determining your success based on beating this team. Desmond Ridder, I always liked the guy. I think that he's a leader. I'm not going to hate on him just because he played for the Falcons. I watched him at Cincinnati. He's a guy who people rally around. He's a guy that's a gamer. He can hurt you with his arm. He can hurt you with his legs. He reminds me a lot, to be honest with you, he reminds me a lot of a young Russell Wilson. His ability to be able to get the ball down the field and also be able to like prolong plays using his legs. He's not afraid to run and try to scramble for a first down. I'm not saying that he's Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick, the second coming, but he can get out that pocket and he can escape and hurt you with his legs. So the Saints better be prepared for this game to make sure that they have a spy on him because he does have the ability to run. And I think that, I just think that the Atlanta Falcons, they probably was looking for a change. There's probably going to be some good things that Desmond Ridder is going to be able to do in this game, and that's getting the ball into the hands of his playmakers. Drake London, who's had a solid season, probably could have played better. Also Kadell Patterson is back. We know that he basically was beating the Saints into submission in week 1, and then you have Tyler Algier, a guy who has really been coming along strong as well. So we know that the Atlanta Falcons like to rely on their running game, and that's going to be the best friend of Desmond Ridder, especially getting his first start. And if he can get the hands into his playmakers and try to make sure that those guys are successful, I think that it's going to be it can be tough for the New Orleans Saints. I got the tail of the tape here. I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of the comparisons between these two teams. The Atlanta Falcons, they average about 22.2 points a game. The New Orleans Saints with 20.4 points allowed. The Falcons allowed 24. The Saints 22. Total yards per game, Atlanta gives 329.6. The Saints, well, not give, but they average 329.6 for the Falcons, 359.2 for the Saints. Yards passing, 170 for the Falcons, 249 for the Saints. Rushing, 158 for the Falcons, 109.5 for the New Orleans Saints. Yards allowed, 390 for the Falcons, 345 for the Saints. Passing yards allowed, 260 for the Falcons, 220 for the Saints. Let's see, rushing yards, 129 and 125, respectively. But, one thing that's alarming to me is the rushing yards. 129. Once again, the Atlanta Falcons like to run the football. The Saints want to run the football, but we all know that the offensive line has been absolutely trash over the last couple of weeks. They can't get any type of push up front. It has been very, very difficult for the New Orleans Saints to run the football. So the New Orleans Saints have been on a bye, and so has the Atlanta Falcons. So both teams have absolutely no excuse to not have their best foot forward. All right, you had 2 weeks to come up with a game plan in order for you to be able to stop your rivals. The Saints need to go back to what helped them win the game last time they played the Atlanta Falcons, and that is utilizing Alvin Kamara and utilizing Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is the guy who I feel like can actually win this game for the Saints. Taysom Hill is to the Saints what Kadell Patterson is to the Falcons, okay? Now, you can make the argument about Kadell Patterson's ability to be special teams and all that kind of stuff, but when it comes to being a matchup problem, both of these guys are two guys that can give teams fits. So I think the Saints need to utilize Taysom Hill. I think it was a couple of weeks ago where you start to see Taysom Hill come into the game, and then you see Andy Dalton. It was kind of flipping out and stuff like that. I think that you need to probably have a game like this. Taysom Hill does a really good job against the Atlanta Falcons for the most part. So if you want to utilize the running game, you might have to get a little bit exotic with it. You might have to get a little bit creative in order for you to win this football game. As far as Alvin Kamara, we all know that he spoke to the media. He talked a little bit about the Saints and, the running game and, trying to, get a little bit better when it comes to the running game. He talked about, a lot of people, being critical of his play, being critical of the Saints play and not understanding what they see. Look, I understand where Alvin Kamara is coming from. Like, if you work extremely hard every single day and you go to work and you try to put your best foot forward and those results that you're looking for don't pan out, I understand completely why, you can be upset when people are criticizing you about your play. But I mean, make no mistake about it. I mean, look, it gives me no pride saying this. I mean, Alvin Kamara has not been the Alvin Kamara that we're used to. I don't know if it's because the New Orleans Saints aren't utilizing him the way that they normally did, or just the fact that maybe, it's just an uphill battle right now. But regardless, if the Saints are going to win this game, they're going to need Alvin Kamara at his best. They're going to need to find ways to get the ball into his hands. I don't know what happened to the screen game. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know what happened to the choice routes. I don't know what happened with that, but it just seemed like to me like they're just calling Alvin Kamara to run right up the middle, almost like in a, base formation. Like, what are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. He can run up the middle, but that's not how his bread is buttered, right? It's not about halfback dives. It's not about anything like that. It's not about delayed handoffs. Alvin Kamara is a guy that can hurt you with stretch plays and toss plays, and he also can help you in a passing game. So I don't understand why the Saints aren't using him that way. To me, if you're not using him that way, you pretty much conceded that your team is not good enough in order for him to be able to do the things that he normally would do. But y'all need to find a way to do that if you want to make it interesting down the stretch. As far as the wide receivers are concerned, Chris Olave, who had a up and down game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is unfortunate for him. I mean, I felt like before that game, he was leading, all rookies as far as being rookie of the year based on his play and his production. I mean, he has like over 800 yards and 60 receptions. So, I mean, he's looking really good. But, I mean, you can't be dropping passes in crucial situations. When you are the guy that everybody's relying on and you are that number one guy, you got to be able to make some of these plays. And, even though Chris Olave is extremely talented, he leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, you got to be able to come up with some of these tough catches, and that separates the good from the great. Okay, I mean, right now he's really good, and if he wants to be really great, he has to go out there and he has to make the catches that are very difficult. But if you're the number one guy, you got to make it. Jarvis Landry, hopefully he can get involved in this game. I don't know if his knee has been bothering him, his ankle, what's going on with that. He's giving it the Warrior try, which I can respect. But, Jarvis Landry, I think we all expected for him to be more in a Saints uniform than what he actually has been. It hasn't been the best experience, but if he can make some plays and maybe, get in some third down situations and help the Saints convert, that will be fine. As of the making of this podcast, I'm not sure if Marshawn Lattimore is going to be playing this game. Neither am I sure about Zach Bourne or any of the other guys that came off of IR not too long ago. But Marshawn Lattimore, you don't want to rush a guy like that back dealing with a rib injury, dealing with something like that. I get it that the Saints would like to have him back, but you want to make sure that you have him healthy for the foreseeable future. And that's why you got to rely on guys, like the Alante Taylors and the Paulson Adebos. Paulson Adebo has been a little bit up and down this season. He hasn't put his best stuff on film, but I'm not ready to write off Paulson Adebo just yet. I think he's an extremely smart guy. I think he's extremely talented. And I think that, he'll be able to get himself out of his sophomore slump that he's in. As far as Alante Taylor, I just think that he's a guy that plays with a lot of confidence, and he's going to need it today. Whatever matchup that he gets, he's going to have to be able to play to a high level. You got to be able to make some of these plays in order for your team to be successful. Now, am I looking for a bunch of turnovers and stuff like that? Well, that would be nice, because we know that the New Orleans Saints, the last time they had a game that was filled with turnovers and flipping the field defensively, it happened in a game in Atlanta in week 1. And there were a few games in between that we actually seen that. Not many turnovers for the New Orleans Saints this season. So hopefully they'll be able to generate some turnovers, maybe force a fumble in order to get the ball back into the offense and give them a shorter field. As far as the offense, again, making sure that you convert in the red zone. This has been a constant concern. The Saints were able to move the football, and this has been the justification for Andy Dalton for the last few weeks, right? Oh, we moving the football. We moving the football. We moving the football. Yes, you are moving the football, but are you getting into the end zone? And the answer has been no. Okay, the Saints have to find ways to get themselves into the end zone. I don't know if Jawan Johnson is going to be playing today. It would be nice if he did, but he was a guy that was a really good red zone threat. And if he just so happens to not be able to make it today, then you got to find ways to get the ball into the end zone by using guys like Taysom Hill, using guys like, Adam Troutman. You got to find ways to get the ball into the end zone and not just settling for field goals. All right. And also, you got to get a little bit more aggressive when it comes to the offensive play calling. I'm not saying you got to go out here and be all up in your bag with exotic plays and trick plays and trying to trick them off the field, but you need to try to find ways to try to be as aggressive as you possibly can. That includes maybe going for it on 4th down when you are on your side of the 40. You know what I'm saying? Like trying to 45, 40 or 45. Try to find ways to be creative. I mean, honestly, you're fighting for your playoff lives, the very little life that you have, and you're also fighting for your job if you're Dennis Allen. So you want to lay it all on the line. Like if you're going to, if you're going to be successful, I mean, you got to do it like Dean Martin. You got to do it your way. You got to be able to make sure that you're actually doing things the way that, you see fit, and let the chips fall where they may. but don't just concede and just give up and quit and just take the easy road all the time. I mean, that's not what it's all. I mean, that's not what it's all about. Not in today's NFL. You got to be aggressive and you got to be able to convert and get the ball into the end zone when you are in the red zone. Defensively, look, you got to be able to get a little bit of pressure on Desmond Ridder. Okay, my suggestion to you would be try to get it with the front four. Now, can you get it with the front four? Possibly. I mean, I think that it is a good chance that you can, even though the Falcons run the ball really well. Their offensive line isn't like world beaters or anything like that. It's not to a point where I don't feel like the Saints can be able to get pressure on Desmond Ridder, and they got to find ways to do that. I will give the Falcons credit. The first game, they kept the Saints defensive line in check. But this game, I just feel like a lot of things have been going on. You know, you have a lot of injuries, a lot of banged up guys. So maybe the Saints will be able to find a little bit more success getting pressure on Desmond Ridder in this game. You got to find ways to knock him, you know, off his spot, make him rattle. The Superdome, you know, the people that's in it, they got to make sure that they give him problems. You got to find ways to try to neutralize this guy, because if you don't, then we're going to have that reoccurring story of rookies coming, playing against the Saints and having great performances and being labeled the future of their franchise. I mean, we've seen this so many times, so hopefully this won't be the case with Desmond Ridder. So the question on everyone's mind is, who is going to win this football game? Who is going to win this football game? To be quite honest with you, I think the Falcons are going to win this football game. I think that it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a physical game because, like I said, these teams do not like each other. But when it comes down to nip and tuck games, it's about coaching. And I just feel like Arthur Smith is a better coach than Dennis Allen. And we all seen last time the Saints took the field, we seen Dennis Allen when it came down to it. He did not put this team in a position to succeed. All right. They played off. They didn't play aggressive enough. You know, Tom Brady, they didn't stick to the script, you know, and they allowed Tom Brady to nickel and dime his way down the field to a victory. So I just think that when it comes to games like this, it's about coaching, you know, like who is going to make the right adjustments in order for their team to come out on top. So I honestly don't feel like, you know, the Saints have that in Dennis Allen, but I feel like the Atlanta Falcons may have it in Arthur Smith. So I feel like the Falcons are going to win this game. It's going to be close. It's going to be an edge of your seat game because they always are. None of these teams, to me, you know, be beating the brakes off each other for the most part. If they do, it's a shock. So I have the Atlanta Falcons, you know, eking out a victory over the New Orleans Saints and finally putting the final nail in the coffin for the New Orleans Saints 2022 season. So we can look forward to the future. Hopefully it's as brighter than what we actually seen this year, because honestly, it's been completely disappointing. But I would love to hear from you. What do you think about the Saints-Falcons game? Would love to hear your comments. Comment down below. Like and share this video. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast. We have previous episodes available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor FM. You can follow me on Facebook.com, search the State of the Saints podcast. And you can follow me also during the game on Twitter at TJAY Jones 8. Till next time, all I got to say is,